Hi everyone, welcome to class. Today we are going to review the present perfect verb tense. Although you learned present perfect tense in middle school, and I know many of you even learned it in primary school, many students are still confused about the present perfect tense. And this is mostly because although English speakers use the present perfect all the time, it's really common, there's no present perfect tense in Chinese grammar. So it's really difficult for Chinese speakers to know when exactly the perfect tense should be used in real life. You don't really have anything that you can relate it to. So, what is the present perfect and when do we use it in English? First, something that is interesting to me is the name present perfect. What does it mean? In grammar, the word perfect means past. So when we use the present perfect, we are literally using the present past. Does that make sense? We're talking about something in the past that's important or relevant or connected to the present, something that affects us in some way right now. More specifically, there are 3 scenarios when we should use the present perfect. The first scenario is to talk about activities that happened at an unspecified time in the past. For example, I could say, I have visited Beijing 3 times. I'm not telling you exactly when I went. If I did that, I would have to use the simple past. For example, I visited Beijing 3 months ago. Another example with the present perfect, I could say, he has finished the English homework. When did he finish? It's not specific. If I want to say when exactly he finished it, I'll have to use the simple past. For example, he finished the English homework yesterday. The second situation when we use the present perfect is to talk about activities that started in the past and continue in the present. They aren't finished yet. And often with these sentences, we use the words for or since. Let's see some examples. I could say, I have studied English for 6 years. In other words, I started 6 years ago and I'm continuing to study English now in the present. That's what I was talking about. We're connecting the past and the present in some way. Another example could be, Bob and I have been friends since we were babies. We became friends way back when we were little, and we're still friends now. The third situation where we need to use the present perfect is when we are talking about the results of something that just happened or a situation where we can see the results. For example, I could say, I have cleaned my room, which would be a lie, but maybe I just finished cleaning it and I want to show my roommate, look, I've cleaned my room. You can see the results of it being clean. Or maybe my computer wasn't working and I took it to get fixed and I could say, oh look, my computer has been repaired. It's good to use now. Or I could be talking about a friend and say, oh, Sarah has broken her arm. If I say that, it just happened, or it happened a little while ago, but her arm is still broken. I can see the result. So remember, when you are talking about these 3 scenarios, activities that happened at an unspecified time in the past, activities that started in the past and continue to the present with for or since, or when we're looking at the results of something, we need to use the present perfect. I know it can be difficult sometimes to think of situations in this way, especially the last one. It's hard to tell sometimes, am I looking at a result? What is this situation? So something important that I want to say is that there are key words, there are important words that help us know when to use the present perfect. 2 of them that I already mentioned are for and since. And other words that we often use with the present perfect are already, yet, ever, still, just, and times. Let me give you some examples. 4. I have studied English for 6 years. Since. I haven't seen my best friend since 2016. Already. We have already talked about for and since. Yet. We use this word in questions and negative sentences. For example, have you eaten yet? I haven't eaten yet. Ever. We use this word in questions, especially if we're asking about something that we don't know. Has it happened or has it not happened yet? For example, have you ever traveled to Europe? I don't know if you ever have in your whole life. Or, have you ever seen the movie Transformers? I'm not sure. Has the teacher ever arrived late to class? Still. We use this word in negative sentences. For example, I still haven't eaten. Just. We can use this in affirmative or positive sentences to talk about results, which was situation number 3. For example, I have just cleaned my room. I have just explained the present perfect. Times. If you remember, at the beginning of the lesson, I gave an example and I said, I have visited Beijing 3 times. This is an example of an unspecified moment in the past. When exactly did I visit Beijing? You don't know, and I'm not telling you. But if I mention how many times I have done something, I have to use the present perfect. A couple more examples could be, my teacher has explained the present perfect 20 times. I have typed my password 8 times, but I still can't access my account. I think that's probably happened to all of us. How many times have I told you not to watch TV all day? So we've heard a lot of examples of sentences in the present perfect. The form should be clear, but just in case, let's go over it really quickly to make sure that we all know how to form sentences using this verb form. For affirmative sentences or positive sentences, we need a subject, the verb have or has, and a past participle. For example, I have done my homework. She has visited Tokyo. Negative sentences. We're going to start with a subject, then we're going to have haven't or hasn't, and a past participle. For example, I haven't done my homework. She hasn't visited Tokyo. And for questions, we move the verb have or has to the beginning before the subject. For example, have you done your homework? Has she visited Tokyo? Now, to finish off, I'm going to give you some practice questions. They should take you 15 to 20 minutes to finish. They're pretty basic, but they're extremely helpful for you to consolidate today's knowledge. I know that a lot of Chinese students like aiming high and are really only interested in working on difficult questions without building a solid foundation. But in the end, that's not effective. You'll find yourselves getting confused with many problems, and you'll probably just end up losing interest in learning English. In this course, we'll spend the first 30% of the time working on your foundations, and the other 70% of the time working on more challenging Gaokao questions. Once you have a solid foundation, you'll find the Gaokao questions very easy to deal with. And you will also find, hopefully, that studying English is actually really enjoyable and useful.